afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where it is you are logged in from. It is evening where I am in Bali, Indonesia, but I am delighted to host you wherever you may be this EQ Lunch and Learn. Welcome to the first episode for 2024. Woo, we made it to another year. How amazing is that? It's really great to connect with you once again. Our theme for this month is positive beginnings and personal growth. It is January, and January is all about starting afresh, that new page. In a world where resilience and adaptability are often demanded, personal growth becomes not only a desire but a necessity. Positive beginnings are catalysts that set in motion the wheels of personal growth. When we embrace the power of optimism, cultivate healthy habits, foster a growth mindset, and navigate challenges with resilience, we unlock the door to a future brimming with possibility. The journey of personal growth is not a destination, but a continuous evolution. And it all begins with a conscious decision to embark on a path illuminated with positivity, purpose, and the unwavering belief in yourself and your potential. I'm really delighted to host you for another fabulous conversation in this EQ Lunch and Learn. In this episode, we're going to be looking at the power of positive beginnings, understanding the impact of the choices that we make, and long term professional development and personal development and investing in both. We're going to be talking about fostering a growth mindset. What is this and how can this help us? We'll talk about optimism, how we can navigate challenges that will arise when we are moving forward to grow. We'll look at how we can navigate those challenges that arise and have greater resilience. And we'll be talking about how to create a growth plan. So that is our agenda for today. And as always, I have a fabulous panel who are going to help me to unpack this conversation. I couldn't possibly do it on my own. So I hope you have your lunch for those where it's lunchtime. For those of us where lunch was a few hours ago, I have my water right beside me and a snack just in case I need it. But I hope you have something to bite on as we bring the learning. As I always say, you bring the lunch and we will bring the learning. So, who are my panelists? Well, today I have three amazing panelists, one who has been here before and two new. So let's start with one of the newbies. I want to introduce you to Kirote Mutisia. Kirote is actually, interestingly, a quantity surveyor by profession, and she's passionately curious about all things talent management. She works as a management consultant supporting high potential African businesses to develop scalable approaches to economic growth. She is a proud alumna of ISEC, having served as the country director for the Kenyan chapter back in 2019-2020. We love having ISECers, if I can call them that, on this program. They bring such amazing insight. In her free time, she enjoys reading, learning chess, baking, and all things personal development. As always, if you want to connect with her, you can connect with her on LinkedIn. Kirote, welcome, welcome, welcome. It's great to have you
Thank you
here.
so much. Yeah, so excited to be here for the first time, hopefully for the last. But yeah, looking forward to the conversation we're about to dive into.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Katlego is also a possible Iseker, or maybe he's just good friends. Oh, he's not. So he's just good friends. Okay, so you're good friends with those who, have served in ISEC. It's great to have you back again, Katlego. Really looking forward to the conversation. So let me tell you a little bit about this gentleman. He is a seasoned leadership development facilitator, coach, and consultant with a passion for youth development and unlocking human potential. He's the co founder and CEO of Near Delta, a leadership and culture consulting firm. He has a decade worth of experience in corporate education, student and organizational leadership, and coaching. And interestingly, he was a founding member of the African Leadership University, was part of the pioneering team at ALX in Nairobi, Kenya, where he served as a community manager. Thank you very much for welcome. Say hi to us, Katlego, and if you want to connect with him, you can connect with him on LinkedIn.
Oh, hi. Thanks, Mucha. It's always such a pleasure to be back here. So looking forward to the conversation.
Fantastic. Thank you. So last but not least, we have with us Polly Mwangi. Unfortunately, Polly is having some technical issues, as is the case in life. So I'm going to introduce her in absentia, and then as soon as she's able to connect with us, I will bring her on board. Polly Mwangi is a general HR practitioner with over 3 decades of practical work experience in the corporate world. She's worked in different industries, from NGO, insurance, telecommunications, commodities, and in the financial space, where she worked as a director, regional HR director for one of the big four for 9 years. She has a master's in training and human resource management from Leicester University. When she's not doing all things HR and training, she enjoys being a mentor, and she creates amazing content for a YouTube channel, which she'll tell us more about, called Talent Insights by Polly Mwangi. She is a big believer in continuous development. So you can connect with Polly in the meantime on LinkedIn. And like I said, once she is online with us, we will bring her on. Hopefully, she'll be able to sort out the challenge she's having. Unfortunately, she is failing to connect her camera to our platform. All right, so Kirote Katlego, let's get started and dive right into this great conversation we're going to be having today, because we're talking about new beginning. It's January, right? Okay, fair enough. It's the last day of January, but we've managed to sneak it in so that I can say it's January. As we start this new year, we always take time to reflect on our progress and accomplishments over the last year, right? So let's start by talking about what personal growth is, right? And what are some of the key milestones or indicators of progress that one should look for when you are reflecting on your journey, maybe over the last year, as you're wrapping up 2023, or indeed perhaps there are those who are looking over the last 5 years. So since I brought you on first, Kiroche, let me ask you this question first, and then Katlego, I'm going to ask you the same question. How do you define personal growth? And what are some of the key milestones or indicators of progress that you look for yourself as you're reflecting back?
Yeah, thanks. Happy to kick off the conversation. So I would say, in the most simplest of terms, personal growth is advancement in any, section or area of life, because life is multifaceted. So if you're thinking about your career, or if you're in business, could be like intellectual, spiritual. So basically, any progress that you have within life as a whole, I would term that as personal growth. When I think about my personal experiences in, measuring and seeing whether there's progress, I will just start off by saying I'm a very structured person. And so I go through a lengthy process at the beginning or at the end of every year to define what are my goals for the next year. And it's pretty much based on like 5 categories. So I'll say, I'll put down, these are my top 3 goals within, say, for example, my spiritual category. And then these are my goals for the career, etc. And then I break those down further. So I have my annual goals, break them down into quarters, break them down into months, and then do my weekly to-do lists. So basically, it's very easy for me to actually see whether there's been progress, because I can actually tell whether I'm ticking off the day-to-day activities that will lead me to that one large big goal at the end of the year. But also, I appreciate there's some more qualitative aspects, especially when you think about growth in terms of your mindset or your attitudes. Are you able to go through life experiences differently? And so I'd say that is also an indicator or a mark of progress for me, just being able to introspect or to take time to think about how I went through a certain experience and then compare it with probably a similar experience at a previous time in my life, and see whether there's been, progress, whether I was more confident, whether I was able to stand out, etc. So also recognizing that, yes, you could qualitatively measure, but sometimes it's just, comparing experiences and saying, I think I did better because of ABC reasons. Yeah.
I love that. And I particularly love that point you made about looking at the qualitative as well. I think it's very easy for us to set ourselves quantitative goals, where you're ticking off, that these are the steps that you've taken, but being able to reflect on the qualitative, right? The stuff that is not so crystal clear helps us to really push ourselves to step outside of our comfort zone. Thank you very much for that. Kat, what are your thoughts on the same question?
Yeah, no, thank you, Mucha. And yeah, Korete, I mean, I think spot on with a lot of the, reflections that you've shared. And much to say, sorry, this is a random. I know it's Lunch and Learn, so it's like, but such a beautiful name. I've never heard the name Nkirote before, so such a wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks for those insights. Yeah, look, I think Mucha, for me, before even defining personal development, for me, it's two key like premises or like views that start, right? One is appreciating that as human beings, we're not static, right? We are constantly becoming. And so that there's that need then to figure out how do we, in that constantly becoming, constantly growing, manage that growth in an intentional way. So that's the one side of it, right? And then I think the second side of it is also just like, whether you're a believer, you're a Christian or whatever, but you assume that your being here is a gift from somewhere, right? And so if you believe in a God, you believe that your being here is a gift from that God, and therefore what you do with that gift, and there's that old story of the talents, right? It's like the expression of your appreciation of the gifts that you were quote unquote given is then how you multiply them, right? So I think then of personal development as a responsibility we all have based on what we've been given to refine, to define, to refine and work on improving as our response to whatever we believe the giver is, right? So then for me, having said that, when I think about personal development, it's essentially the pursuit of a better version of yourself. So it's constantly working of a better version of yourself. But then therefore, if you're thinking about then what is it or what are the markers? I think you asked the question, how do you know you're doing personal development? For me, and maybe it's overly simplistic, but it's like, am I a better version this year than I was last year, right? It's just asking that simple question. Am I a better person? Am I a better brother? Am I a better, team member? Am I a better boyfriend? Am I a better this, that, whatever? And then I think, Kiroto, you spoke about the different facets of our lives, right? Can you look at the facets of your life and saying, am I eating healthier? Am I more spiritually grounded? Am I reading more books this year than I did last year? And that for me is the essence of what professional development is about.
I love that. And I mean, I really resonate with what you mentioned about being a gift. And as a Christian myself, I really do subscribe to the idea that I have to be a steward of the time, talent, and treasure that I have been given. And I am accountable for it. And so when I do take that time to reflect on where I am vis-a-vis where I'm trying to get to, I am exercising that accountability and saying, okay, this is where I am. And when you talk about this idea that am I a better version of myself, I think that speaks to the qualitative data that Nkirote was talking about, right? So better version of myself may not be evident in ones and twos, but it's something more qualitative. Am I being more empathic as I interact, with my team, with my family, with my community? And I think that that's really powerful. So what I'm hearing from both of you is that it is critical to take that time to reflect. And as an individual, you have to identify what measures make sense to you, both from a qualitative and a quantitative perspective. So thank you very much for that. If you are with us, you're so welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. Heather, thank you for being the first person on the board with a comment. We love hearing from you. So please do engage with us. We will come specifically to ask you for any questions that you have, but you don't have to wait until that time. Feel free to share your questions as we go along, and we'll be happy to answer those. At least I'll be happy to ask my panel to help me answer those. So thank you very much for being here with us. I'd like to hear from you. What is your definition of personal growth? Do share wherever you're joined in from. We are streaming this live to LinkedIn, but we're also streaming it to our YouTube channel and to Facebook. So wherever you're logged in from, share with us, what are your thoughts around personal growth? We'd really love to hear from you. So welcome to Kelvin. Thank you so much for joining us. Elizabeth, it's great to have you here. Indeed, this is a fantastic topic to kick off 2023. I want to jump ahead of the queue and go to a question. I know we'll have a section for Q&A. I think this question is very relevant to the question that I asked you now. Actually, no, I want to hold that thought because I've just remembered we're going to come and talk about that. So Kelvin, sorry, not Kevin, bear with me. I'm going to come back to your question. And if I forget, panelists, please do remind me, because actually we're going to be talking a bit about resilience and bouncing back. So I think that would be more appropriate then. So let me go further. What perspective, Katlego, do you think EQ and mindset plays in the journey of personal growth? What perspective? This EQ Lunch and Learn is meant to help us to see the intersection between emotional intelligence and many of the things that we grapple with on a day-to-day basis at work. So tell us a bit more. What role does emotional intelligence and mindset play in this role of personal growth? And a little later, we'll talk about some of the practical steps. But at this point, what role does it play?
No. For sure. Thanks, Mucha. But once when I heard this question, I immediately thought, is this like a trick question? Because when Mucha is asking about emotion, like, oh, maybe I should turn this question back on you. It's like that meme where someone is being interviewed and they ask them, tell us about yourself, and they respond, I'd rather not. I really need this job, So I'm like, I'm not sure if it's safe to speak about emotional.
This is a safe chat. I promise you, we can all learn from each other. Feel safe.
For sure. No, I mean, I think I guess then, and it's actually a really good question, right? Because that intersection between emotional intelligence and personal development is so critical, and that you do need, emotional intelligence or to be. I almost think, I've just recently gone back to the gym, and one of the things you work on in the gym before you work on all the other things is the core, right? So it's almost like once you have a strong core, the strength, a stamina, all the other stuff just come, right? And I think of emotional intelligence as almost core to the personal development, physique development, right? That you can't do all the other things well if the core is not right. But also, I think, I could now go into defining emotional intelligence and all that stuff, but I'll leave that to you, Mucha, and all the components and all the stuff. But for me, I think when I think about emotional intelligence, I think of it basically as just the ability to see yourself more clearly and yourself in the world more clearly, right? Like that for me has become much more clearer. And, in the work I'm doing right now as an executive coach, I realize that like the heart of the work that I'm doing with most of my, coaching clients is to help them see, like most of the time the client will come and say, I want to improve this, or I want to do this, right? But I would say 60% of the work is not helping them do anything, but helping them see themselves better, gain deeper understanding of their inner landscape and what's happening within. And I almost feel like that is the power of emotional intelligence, because like when we are better, right, we do better, right? And EQ is that powerful way of helping us understand ourselves, understand our emotions, and then be able to also relate with the world around us in a more effective way. And therefore, in the path of constant development, EQ helps us on two sides, right? One is it helps us be more reflective of our own states and our own thinking and our own feeling and our own being and our own showing up, so that we're more intentional about how we improve it. But it also helps us to be able to more effectively engage the world around us in a way that supports our development, right? Because it helps us then be able to navigate, the world around us in a more conscious and more intentional way, and gives us cues on how to develop. So yeah, I think in a nutshell, for me, I think it's almost like, EQ and professional development are integral to each other. That EQ is like the core that enables the professional development to happen, but it's also like when we strengthen the EQ, right, and get a better sense of who we are, and get a better like core strength, for lack of a better word, from a place of better self-awareness, better self-management, better motivation, better empathy, better relationship management, that the outcomes of personal development, become, what do they call this? You see, now English is running away, but this. So
I hear you. Yeah, I hear you. Wow, guys, I told you, you bring the lunch, we will bring the learning. The learning is just dropping. I feel like we could even close right now, and there'd be so much that you are taking away from this conversation. Thank you so much, Kat and Kirote, for kicking us off in such a powerful way. And Kirote, I'm going to come to you in a minute, but I want to just reflect on something Kat said, or a number of things Kat said. Number one, that EQ is the core. And Kat, you know what? We all learn, because I've never really reflected on EQ like that. And you're so right. EQ is the core. It's the core that we need to work on first. And another thing you said is this idea that when you interact with leaders and they tell you, I want to work on X, the work is actually on themselves first. I think that that's just so true, that when we are able to look inward and see ourselves and understand ourselves and see how we show up in the world, that is where the work begins. One of the things I always say is the first and most important step towards achieving your goals is a deeper understanding of yourself. If you can't understand yourself, then it's going to be difficult to achieve anything. It'll be difficult for you to say, I want to grow in, a particular skill, if you haven't understood yourself. So I love that. And I can see our audience love it too. Heather says that there's so much evidence to prove that leaders with high emotional intelligence make far better leaders. And I think this goes back to the point that Katlego was saying, that at the end of the day, when leaders work on themselves, which is a critical part of emotional intelligence, then they are able to show up as better leaders. And Heather is saying, yes, understanding self. Felicitas, it's great to have you here. Felicitas George, wise teaching, I can see. Thank you very much for joining us. Indeed, my panel is, as always, phenomenal. So let me come to you, Kirote. I can see that Polly is trying to log in, but still having issues. Kirote, I want to talk about influences, right? What influences us in our ability to grow and our approach to professional and personal development. So as a young, professional African woman, how have societal and cultural factors influenced your views about growth and your approach to your personal and professional development? Because we're talking about how EQ and mindset can, impact our ability to grow. So where does culture and society come into it, especially from your perspective? Like I said, you're young, you're African, and you're a woman.
Yeah, great. So this is actually a very interesting question. I don't think I've actually ever thought about what impacts or what influences my view on my personal growth and how I go about goal setting. So maybe beginning from my childhood, I would say in some sense I had a privileged background because I got to see my mom work both as a career woman and as an entrepreneur. And also my parents were very big on, education, extracurricular activities, and none of that was really from a gender lens. So I would say my brother was encouraged to perform or work hard just as much as my sister and I were. And when you think about the opportunities that were afforded to us, it was really never about like you're a boy, do this, you're a girl, do this. So just, are you interested? Do you have a talent for it? You see some form of ability that we could now grow and explore. So when I think about that, like growing up, like my dad was very big on, like he gave us this sense of you can do anything, like there are no limitations. I remember when we would have conversations back early on about inheritance, there was just never gender norm, quote unquote, in our family. And I feel very privileged to have grown up in such a background. And so now when I think about it, because growing up, I didn't think it was a thing like to be pointed out. I feel now when I even think about my career, I never really think about, I'm going after this opportunity. Is it reachable for a woman, or should I even be putting myself in such a sector, or going after such certain opportunities? So I guess what that did for me is it removed certain limitations. And for me, it's just, do I want to do it? If I put in the work, I truly believe that if I put in the work like anyone else, then any opportunity is reachable for me, regardless of what society says or what the gender norms are. And it's pretty much been a similar experience when I moved into university as well as career. So back in uni, as I mentioned, I was part of ISEC, which is a global youth-run organization. And I think in terms of membership, the split was 50-50. So like 50 men, 50% men, 50% women. But interestingly enough, I'd say maybe 80% of the leadership positions were occupied by women. And so that in itself was very empowering, to be seated in conferences and see a lot of women up at the front, facilitating conversations or sessions, them going through the application processes and becoming presidents, vice presidents. So again, it's just like, I guess unconsciously was removing those limitations and those glass ceilings. And then as I moved into the workplace, I remember my first role, I was working in a talent recruitment company, and I was part of a high-performing team where the leader was a partner, a female partner. And actually the team I was in, it was only one gentleman out of a team of 4. So again, just reinforcing that, women can do whatever it is they want to do. And then now at Open Capital, it's pretty much the same script. So we have so many senior leadership positions that have been occupied by women, and also partnership-wise, it's a 50-50 split. So I guess just like that aspect of being a woman and thinking about my professional development or my personal development, it's just really never been a factor. Like I've actually never just thought about gender when I'm making decisions about what I want to go after. And then I'd say more broadly, my passion and my desire to just consistently grow. And as Kat said, like becoming a better version of myself. I will say that was heavily influenced by my years in ISEC. So ISEC being a leadership development organization, there was definitely a great focus on developing, like constantly applying for positions and going up the ranks. We had several trainings on different aspects of leadership. You spoke about growth mindset. I remember that used to be like a hot topic in ISEC, like how to have a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. So it was constantly ingrained in us, like you have to keep, seeking more, advancing in whatever facet of life you're focusing on. And then just the setup itself, like it was, you apply for a role this year, you apply for another role next year. We're constantly reading books on like self-help books. That's where I became really passionate about like leadership books, business books, finance books. So I would say a big part of it was my experience in ISEC, like just seeing other people consistently advance, having people I could talk to and that could mentor me and coach me, and just the environment itself. Like we were quote unquote running organizations at 23, at 22. Like there was nothing you couldn't tell me. You could tell me you couldn't do then. So yeah, that was definitely that side. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Thank you very much. I think we saw Polly briefly, but she's dropped off again. But we'll keep trying to get her on. Unfortunately, one of the challenges we have is, being online. If your network is unstable, it really can disrupt your participation. I really like what you said, Girote, and I was reflecting as you were talking on someone whose experience may have been different, right? So you were blessed to grow up in an environment where, the world was your oyster, right? You were empowered, you were encouraged to chase after your dreams. And what I heard you say was these environments shaped you, right? And then when we came to university, same thing, you were in this environment. But what was interesting to me is your environment in terms of your upbringing was beyond your choice, right? So you didn't choose which family to be in, but you made a conscious decision to surround yourself with the kind of people who support your thinking around growth. And I thought that was really powerful. And to anyone who maybe did not have the privilege, like Nkirote, of growing up in an environment where you were encouraged to chase after your dreams, dream big, and to work hard towards achieving it, you can put yourself in environments where that is the case today, and that can help you and motivate you to keep moving forward and to keep growing. We may not have a choice around our families and upbringing. The reality is there are people who, from a societal perspective, grew up in homes where the boy was the one given advantages, the girl wasn't, right? There are those who grew up in homes where you just weren't supported. So it wasn't even just a male-female thing. Generally, as parents, you were not supported. Perhaps your parents didn't even think education was important. But what's powerful is we today can change that narrative by putting ourselves in spaces where we are surrounded by people who are interested in growth. Because when we are part of a collective, we're more likely to push ourselves to grow, as opposed to when we, are trying to do it on our own. So I thought that was a really powerful observation, Nkirote. Thank you very much for sharing that.
If I can just jump in briefly, just something you said about curating your own experiences. I know one of the other things that has really helped me is who I follow on social media. And I know currently, so I know with Instagram, there's that feature of your, like the homepage, I don't know what to call, like the timeline. And then there's a bit on favorites where you could actually curate like specific accounts that you look at. And for me, that's actually people who are big on personal development. So constantly breaking barriers, pushing themselves, challenging biases. So that's also another way of taking your personal growth and like what influences you within your own hands and just saying, I will follow people that share the same values as me, that are looking to grow as much as I'm looking to grow. And that in itself, it not only inspires you, but also gives you this belief that the big goals you have for yourself are within reach. So I definitely say that's one of the other tips you could look into.
Oh my goodness, I absolutely love that. I'm not so great at the curating side of Instagram, so I need to go and look at exactly what that looks like, and I might reach out for tips. But I really like that idea that so what we're saying is the voices you let in wherever those voices are. So whether those voices are a community in your church or on social media or in your community, the voices you let in speak to the person that you are becoming, right? And this goes back to what we are talking about, this idea of being willing to grow and pushing yourself to grow. And I really love what you said. Polly, I can see you. I don't know if you are here with us, Polly. Just say something to me. Yay! You are here.
Yes, I'm here with you, but now on the phone.
No worries.
I couldn't join with the laptop for some reason.
No worries. No worries. Thank you. So I introduced you earlier, Polly. So what I'm going to do is I am going to come to you with a question, but let me give you a moment to just settle in. I know you're hearing the conversation, so I'm going to come to you with a question, and I want to talk about what organizations can do. I want to leverage on your expertise in HR and training and development and people development. So I'm going to come to you with a question on what organizations can do to foster a culture. But before I do that, I just wanted to touch base with Kat quickly on your reflections around, some of the factors around us that can influence our ability to grow, or maybe even hold us back from growing. So, I mean, with Nkirote, I was curious because, of her reflections as a woman. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this idea that the spaces we put ourselves in, intentionally or otherwise, can impact our growth?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was like, while Nkiruto was speaking, I was like, yes, girl, you know, if it was church, I'd be like,
Amen.
would have been left as an altar call, and then we are converted, you know. But no, on such a serious note, man, like I think what Nkoroto is saying is spot on, right? That really, I think the starting point for me is also just that approach of that personal development. We can't grow in a vacuum, you're right? Like no one grows individually, we grow in community, right? And so I think that's appreciating that also because sometimes, you know, we might think of personal development because of the word personal being almost like very much navel gazing, right? Just looking within and, you know, doing introspection. But, you know, a lot of research does show that a lot of growth happens outside of ourselves, whether it's just like the frame from like Johari's window and the, you know, idea that like there's so much about yourself that you don't know about yourself, right? There's things that people outside of you can call out in you that you're not even aware of, right? So it's that need for that intentional community to support our growth, to support our development. And I'm a big proponent of, you know, and I love, and like you, Mucha, and maybe it just is a reflection on our age here, but, you know, I'd have never thought of Instagram as like how to curate a personal place for growth, right? But I guess I say that because I think of like, I actually am a big proponent that, you know, I often speak about this idea of you have to, and it's a Robin Sharma idea of that whole idea that, you know, you have to think of yourself. If you're really serious about personal development, you need to think of yourself in the same way a company or an organization thinks of themselves, right? So if we take like a Nkirote Pty Ltd, and I think Nkirote, you speak to some of that, right? It's like if you think that like organizations have annual strategic planning meetings, right? What does that look like for you, where you sit down and you do what's my strategic plan for the year, right? And you've got budget reviews. You take time to say, what's the budget review, right? How do I look? How are my finances? What's the trajectory? Where am I going, right? But also in that, he also speaks then about like, you have to build a board, right? Like, what does your board of advisors look like, right? Who do you bring into your life to speak and advise? What does your team look like? So maybe you might have advisors, but you think about what's the people that you bring around you that will inspire, that will engage, that will develop, but also what are the peers, right? And the communities and spaces you're part of that help, you know, define and refine your work. As they say, what do they call it? Iron sharpens iron. So how do you find where the iron is sharpened? And I mean, you know, the example you're giving, Nkiroto, of AIESEC, right? AIESEC is such a fantastic example of spaces of iron sharpening iron. So how do we then, as young people, constantly think about personal development, not as just something we're doing for ourselves or by ourselves, but how do we expose ourselves to environments and spaces that enable us and challenge us to continue to grow? Because sometimes you might be thinking you're awesome. I spoke here. Until you go to the gym and you see some of the people there, you're like, yo, yeah, I thought I was fit. Yeah, but maybe let me go back home and do more of my homework, you know? So yeah, that's just my thoughts.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you very much. Let me just give quick shout outs before I come to you. Polly, Kimani, Kinuthia, thank you so much for being here. And I am so touched by your comment. Hi, Mucha. I wanted to take a moment to express my sincere appreciation for the invaluable guidance and support you've provided us with throughout our EQ coaching sessions in 2023. Can't wait to see what's in stock for 2024. Thank you so much for being here. It's the audience participation that makes the session so much more vibrant. And I definitely couldn't do it with my amazing panelists who do this of their, free will. I reach out and say, hey, can you join? And they say, yay, and they're here and they're sharing their insights. So thank you to them. So Polly, let me come to you. I introduced you earlier, Polly, but for the benefit of those who have joined us now, let me just give you some context about who this woman is so it can help you understand why I'm asking her this question. She is an HR practitioner with over 3 decades. Yes, you heard me. 3 decades of practical work experience in the corporate world. I met Polly when she was working as a regional director for one of the big 4. And she worked there for 9 years. So Polly has a good understanding of, people and working with people, and a good understanding of spaces, right, where people work. Polly, I want to hear from you around organization. We've talked about this idea that the
Mhm.
spaces we are in can either help fuel our growth or can hold us back from growing. So organizations have resumed operations. People were on holiday. We're coming to the end of January, that month that has 6 weeks or so, seems to have 6 weeks. So we're coming to the end today of January. People have set their targets. I imagine there's clarity on what is expected of them in the year ahead. So, how can organizations foster a culture that encourages personal growth amongst employees, right? And encourages employees to push themselves so that they can achieve their goals.
I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
But
Yes.
first and foremost, I would say that um, if you want to succeed in setting goals as an institution, there has to be some clear communication and alignment. I have found introducing a theme to focus on each
Mm.
year working very well. You introduce a very nice theme that works for everyone and people can relate with it. Then, before you create this theme that will run for the year, you have talked to all the stakeholders. So people feel part of this communication. So as they come in, there's something exciting about the year. It's not just setting goals for the company. You are setting goals, but you are making sure that every performance management discussion has something in it for them because they'll be asking, yes, we are working for this institution. I have these KPIs. You want me to push the institution to this level. And what is there for me? So I have found it working well when there is the clear communication and alignment. Then, in terms
Mm.
of the plans, do you also have individual plans? So, in some of the institutions I worked for, we even have had milestone programs. The milestone programs are for the people that are pushing the agenda for the institution. So you have the KPIs, you know, the numbers, the revenues, then whatever you want to push for the institution. But you also have some milestones for the individuals. So it is exciting as people grow within the organization and as they push their milestone. So you promote the growth mindset. So you are not
Mm.
growing upward and leaving the person to stagnate. So everyone is growing. Then the culture of feedback and development conversation, the check-ins. You're not waiting for the 6 months or the 1 year. How often are you checking in with your people? Now after coming back, everybody has been on holiday. Not one person was left in the office when we closed in December. So it is important that we do the feedback and the check-ins. Are we okay? Is everything going on well? Are you interested in the person who is delivering for you? So I find such conversations working if you want the institution to grow. Grow with the people so that
Mm.
they are happy to work for you. In
Yeah,
fact,
I love
when
that.
opportunities come, if they are happy, they will not leave, they want to remain. And if they leave, they are happy alumni. They have seen what has happened to their career while they worked for you. I prefer a happy alumni than a person that goes out and is very aggrieved. So develop them anyway. Even if they want to leave, they will leave and they'll be happy.
I love that. I love that idea. I don't know, Kirote and Kat, if you've ever thought about yourselves as alumni of your organization, right? We normally think of ourselves as alumni of universities, but that's so true, right? People can leave and be happy alumni. They look back fondly on their time with you because they grew and you supported their growth. And I really like what you said about feedback. I think that feedback is so critical. And earlier, Kat, you mentioned the idea of the Johari window, and you highlighted the fact that there's sides of ourselves that we do not see. And so being open to feedback is critical. And so, to Polly's point, it's really important that as leaders, we are giving feedback to our people so that they can grow. And equally, as an individual in an organization, you need to be open to feedback so that you can grow, so that you can gain those insights around, what is going well and what needs to be improved. So thank you very much. I've got a good question here from Kelvin. I'm going to tell you the question, guys, so that you can gather your thoughts, and then we'll come to the Q&A in about 10, 15 minutes. So Kelvin, your question will be answered. And then I had an earlier question, I know. So Kelvin asked, on matters feedback, how do you give ruinous feedback to your boss? How do you give your boss ruminous feedback? All right, so please just note that question. We'll come to it once we're doing the Q&A. So thank you very much, Kelvin, for asking your question. So as we continue, I have a few more questions I want to ask before we go to the Q&A. We talked about, or Polly brought us very nicely to this question, Kat, where she talks about giving feedback being important, right? So how can improving our EQ, because earlier you talked about improving EQ, and I think my biggest takeaway from your point was around the importance of looking inward and developing this core, right? So how can that help us in addressing the feedback we get? Because Polly talked about getting feedback, and you know what? Getting feedback isn't always easy. Sometimes it's really uncomfortable. I'm currently in Bali doing a training, and today one of the conversations we had is around the masks that we wear and how we wear, many masks, and sometimes we wear masks because we don't want to get that feedback. We don't want to hear what people may say, so we don't show our true selves. So let me not make the question too long. Kat, what are your thoughts around how we can better address feedback from either performance conversations that Polly were talking about, or from performance evaluation, in such a way that we can grow?
No, for sure. And thanks, Mucha. And thank you, Polly, for those reflections and just, thinking around, because it is also all about the ecosystem, right? And that the role of the ecosystem in enabling personal growth. But I mean, maybe a few things from my side with regards to that. One, it's just, let's call a spade, right? I'm doing annual reviews in my organization right now. Has to be the most emotionally taxing and tense thing that ever happens, right? So if there's a time where emotional intelligence is tested, it definitely is through the process of annual reviews, right? But also that like feedback, at Near Delta, the organization I run, we run a workshop around feedback and crucial conversations. And one of the things, when we open, it's like, have you ever seen, when someone sends you a text and says, we need to talk? I don't know what happens. Your spirit leaves your body for a moment and kind of returns. It's like what, and it's just naturally we move into fight or flight. It's like, can I give you feedback? We all know that visceral experience, right? So I think it is the work of reframing how we think about feedback, right? I think one is really realizing that in many ways, feedback is the breakfast of champions. So again, if I go back to that analogy I was using of like personal development and the body, and feedback is really your oats, right? It's like it's the food that you need to eat to realize the areas that you need to, your blind spots that you need to work on, but also to strengthen some of the areas of development, right? So feedback is almost critical, and it's a gift, right? But I think sometimes it's often been weaponized. It's like managers and leaders wait to, I'm gonna give him this feedback. Wow, and that feedback shouldn't be this like punitive thing. But I guess maybe quickly then, Mucha, to think about how can we improve EQ in order to aid being able to receive and give, right? I think to even Kelvin's point, how does EQ help us do this thing of gifting each other better? Because you might have a good gift, but if you don't position it and give it well, it might be ruinous. I don't know if it was ruinous or ruminous, but in itself,
yes,
might be dangerous. So I think a couple of things that emotional intelligence helps you do. One is it helps you better recognize your own emotions when giving and receiving, because emotions in those conversations can make things spiral when things become about what they are not, because your emotions got in the way, right? So being able to say, hey, how are my emotions showing up here, and how do I better regulate them? So am I being defensive? Am I being anxious? And building that self-awareness. I think the second thing is then it also allows you emotional intelligence, or being emotional intelligence allows you to objectively see yourself and objectively engage in the feedback. Because one of the problems with feedback is that we often get ourselves, one of my mentors used to speak about, you need to learn to get out of the way, because sometimes we get in the way, and because you're in the way, you get attacked, and it had nothing to do with you. It was about you, but it wasn't, you, right? And so being able to be objective in seeing the feedback, and not being triggered as well, right? Because sometimes I think there's things maybe in our childhood that can be triggered by certain things people say. I think the third thing is it also helps us better manage our emotional reaction to the feedback, right? So that we can actually receive it as a gift. Because sometimes someone might be giving you as a gift, but because you quickly move to emotion, you then miss the gift and what it's about, right? So I think that's the third thing. The fourth one is and this maybe moves to the other side of EQ, which is the empathy side. It also allows you to better understand other people's perspectives, right? Because when you learn to be, because we think about empathy as like feeling sorry, it's like, oh no, but empathy is like, oh wait, how is it that my boss sees this from that lens? And being able to, before you jump to defense but be able to say, let me fully understand their lens on it. The last three is what the fifth one is it allows you to also not take feedback personally or as an attack, but as a gift, right? It allows you to really say it's not personal. It's really seeing it, again, going back to the objectivity, as just that, as a gift. The last two is it also allows you to be able to use feedback as fuel, as motivation, because sometimes you can use feedback as something that demoralizes you, that deflates you, or as something that garners you up to do better, to move forward and strive, right? And I've seen, as a leader and someone who manages people, you always see there's two kinds of people. There's people, when you give them feedback, they like immediately embrace it, see it as an opportunity for growth. And then there's people, feedback is like, I suck, I'm not good, right? And so being able to use it as fuel. And yes, sometimes, there's, and maybe one day we'll talk about the feedback bucket, right? Which means like sometimes the feedback you receive, you need to be able to say, okay, this is what I'm taking of it, and this is what I'm letting go. It's not me. Maybe it's maybe it's another conversation for another day. And the last thing is, it allows you, when you're emotionally intelligent, it also allows you to leverage feedback as a way of strengthening relationships. And that's a powerful one, because I think sometimes when people give us feedback, one, it takes a lot of courage to give someone feedback, right? And if you don't receive it well, you miss the opportunity to possibly, get yourself a mentor, get yourself an ally, get yourself someone who will then continue to support. Because if you receive it from hey, you know what, that was good feedback, I appreciate it. Can you help me with this thing? Can you support me? Can you be my ally in improving it? Because you've seen it, I haven't seen it. Can you help me, right? And if you receive it very defensively or aggressively, you miss the opportunity to build stronger relationships. And I believe that feedback allows us to do that. So yeah, I know I've said a lot, but I think when I thought about it, these are almost like the 7 things why EQ is then critical in helping you better receive and engage with feedback in a way that is effective, that is productive, but that's healthy, because also there's a danger. And Paul, you're speaking of being in organizations that have bad feedback culture, right? Because then one of the things that often happens in these spaces is what we call feedback triangulation, where then instead of me telling Nkirote that I have a problem with her, I'll go have a fat conversation with Mucha about the problem I have with Nkirote. And so everyone knows what's wrong with Nkirote except Nkirote. So we're all talking about her.
Yeah, so true. Fantastic. Wow. Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Kat. I really love that. I love what you said. And I think those points that you raised about feedback are so profound. And I really resonate with the idea of looking at feedback as an opportunity to build relationships. How powerful is that? When we change how we frame things, we change how we receive them, we change the impact that they have on us. And I think for me, that's just like a really critical takeaway. Just change how you frame it. See it as an opportunity to build a relationship. And indeed, there is this bucket. There is this idea that it's not everything that you will implement, but I always look at feedback as an opportunity for me to mine the information I'm getting. So if I take everything that I've received and I sift it, there's something in there that can be useful for me, something that will help me to grow. So reframe how you feedback, understand that it's someone else's perspective. So that's extending the empathy. Don't take feedback personally. It's not about you, right? It's information around a behavior, but it's not about you. It's not personal. Use it as fuel or motivation. Leverage it to strengthen relationships. Absolutely fabulous. Thank you very much for that. Nathan Muya, thank you so much for joining us. We see you, and we're grateful for the time you've spent. I see that you do have to step away. Holly, I want us to stay a little bit longer on this issue of feedback, performance evaluations, and organizations, right? So most organizations have very clear systems and structures to measure how well people have achieved the organizational goals, right? So you will have your KPIs and your feedback tool, your performance evaluation tool is very clear on measuring them. But is there space for us within our organizations to also build in growth as a KPI, right? And a growth mindset as a KPI. So is there, a way that we can encourage personal growth and the development of a positive mindset in how we structure our performance evaluation and feedback system?
Yes, yes, I would say yes, but majority of times, and it is human, um, we have a tendency on focusing on what went wrong. So, in terms of when you feedback or when you do your performance management, I always believe that you can have a strength-based feedback. In which case, when you have the strength-based feedback, identify the individual strengths. If you hired them to work for you, there must be something you saw in them. Is it that something has gone wrong now? Or do they still have that strength? So can we first focus on their strength, on what they brought to the table? They didn't come to the table empty-handed. There is something they have brought. Even this year we are talking about, there is a particular thing that they did really well. So I like when we focus on that, so that we leverage on the employee strength and not necessarily thinking that the employee failed completely. The other thing we could do during the performance appraisals is work with. We already know that if this is how you performed, this is the reward. You see, performance management need to come with the reward. If we have a PIP system, which is performance improvement plan, the opposite of a PIP is the reward. So let's not focus on only the PIP, the performance improvement plans. Also, we need to focus on some growth plans. And that's when I mentioned the milestone programs. So if you are moving from this level to another level, what are the programs that you have set up for this individual? So when you discuss if they have met basic meeting expectations, what is there in terms of growth? So they will have that positivity. There will be that growth mindset, and it will be built within the system. So you are working on these KPIs. Yes, I want you to improve, to push this institution from this revenue to that revenue. But you as a person, I also want you to grow from here to there. How do you manage this higher revenue if you are not growing as a person? I am telling you to bring in revenue. We were a $1 million institution. We are moving to 3 million. How will you manage if you haven't grown? So those need to be those things need to be married. That you want this person to manage your institution as it grows. So they need to grow with it. They need to have the ability and capability to run that institution as it grows. So link the goals to the developmental plans. So if you are at this level, there are some connecting developmental plans for you as an individual. Then that frequent, timely feedback. So if there is an issue, don't wait for the annual performance review. A good boss or supervisor will bring out a comment once in a while. You are approachable. There is good communication. So whatever kind of feedback you have, if it's 360, there is very good communication between all of you. Somebody senior or junior can see an issue and mention it without looking like it's a feedback. It's just a comment. We are working for the same institution. And we have one goal at the end of the day, to grow this institution. But we are not only growing the institution, we are growing with it. And that's why you have noted there are institutions or companies that have people that are sought. Other people in the industry want to employ people from those institutions because there's something different those institutions are doing. They are not only growing their bottom lines and the top lines, they are also growing the people that bring about those top lines. So we need to think through that, even as we prepare for performance management or feedback sessions. What has been brought in? What has the person brought? But what are we giving the person in return? It's a win-win situation.
I love it. I love it, Polly. I love the way Polly talks about the idea as if it's just such common sense. How do you grow? How do you expect a person to grow the business without growing them as well? It's like, hello, that's like a such a simple thought, and I really like that. That indeed, how do you expect someone to manage a bigger team and yet you're not growing them as a manager? How do you expect someone to manage a team for the first time and yet you're not growing them as a people manager? I think that this is really, really critical insights we are receiving. I told you when we started that you will bring the lunch. That's your responsibility, and I will bring the learning. Not because I'm the one doing it all, but because I have an absolutely phenomenal panel. In the event that you joined us after we'd already started, I just want to take a moment to allow you to be able to connect with my panel, right? So you can connect with my panel on LinkedIn, and we're just going to share with you their LinkedIn links so that you can engage with each of them and continue gaining these amazing insights from them. So we're sharing in the comments so that you can interact with them further. I want us to come to the questions. I'm looking at the time, and the time always flies by. 90 minutes seems like a lot, but somehow it flies by. And I want to make sure that no one leaves here having asked a question and that question was not answered. So I want to scroll back. There were two questions that we had. One question was around giving your boss, I think, bad feedback, right? So there's something you want to tell your boss and it's not very pleasant, right? So how do you give your boss that feedback? So that was from Kelvin Saitoti. And then earlier we had another question. I want to scroll back and find that question again from Kelvin. How do you ensure you do a deliberate personal growth in the midst of setbacks? So how do you make sure you're growing in the midst of setbacks? All right, so those are the two questions I'd like us to address. In the interest of time, Kat, I'm going to come to you first. Growth in the midst of setbacks? Could you please help us with answering that one? And then Polly and Kirote, I'm going to ask you to tell me about giving bad feedback upwards. And then obviously, if any of you wants to chime in on the other one, you're welcome to do so. So Kat, let's start with you.
No, 100%. And thank you, Calvin, for that question. The best way I can respond to that question is probably by saying the best time to grow is in the midst of setbacks. And I mean, I don't know, maybe Polly and Kirote and even you, Mucha, I found like if I look back on my life, the times when I've grown the most was when I was going through setbacks, failure, or what I perceived, right, as setbacks, failure and challenges. But I think to then dig deeper into Calvin's question is to say, then how do you do? Because I think if we're saying, if the premise be true, that you grow the most in times of setback, I think for me, the other piece is to say, but how do you ensure that you are growing through setbacks? Because you might be having setbacks, but not growing through them. And what I found is, I realize a lot of us don't document our lives enough. And I'm a big proponent of reflective practice. I believe every leader, if you're really serious about professional development, it's not just what you consume, but how you digest. We speak about how cows in South Africa, we speak about how cows ziyatshisa is chewing the cud, right? So cows will take in food, and then after taking in food, it will ruminate, and I think many of us take in a lot, we're learning a lot, we're experiencing a lot, but we don't take time to make sense of what we are learning. And I find that having a good reflective practice is a powerful way of building a better understanding and a better making better sense of the growth you're going through in those opportunities. And I mean, being a reflective practice person myself, I often find that then years later, months later, I read back on what I wrote about that season of difficulty, of challenge, and I can then see how that has kind of informed the growth and the development I've been through. So I think that's my lens on how to ensure that you continue to grow. One, it's acknowledging that setbacks do provide great opportunities for growth, and two, that in the midst of setbacks, it's about being able to capture and document your learnings from those setbacks so that you can use them as fodder for continuous growth. But that's one lens. I think there's other lenses like having the right mindset to experience challenges, but won't dwell into that. And maybe Polly and Kirote might want to touch on that. But that's just the one piece and insight I would have on it.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Kat. Kirote, I want to come to you. So Kirote, feel free if you want to add something to what Kat said about the question around, growing in the midst of challenges. But I also would like you to touch on the question around giving feedback upwards, right? And I think that's an opportunity to grow right there, right? Giving feedback
Definitely. Yeah. So I guess on the Kat question, for me, what has worked is sometimes just take the beating, like be in your feelings about the setback, like go through the emotions. I think acknowledging that this opportunity you wanted is out of reach, or maybe you tried something and it didn't work. I think there's a lot of power in acknowledging the emotions that come up with that and feeling them through, and then not being able to get back on your feet and doing everything else that Kat said. So that would be my addition there. On giving upward feedback, this is a it's a sensitive topic to give sometimes. I would say first and foremost, context is key, and I don't think every single situation you should give upward feedback, especially if it is criticism or bad feedback. And why I say that is, like the dynamic of working with someone that is more senior than you. Obviously, you have to first take into account what the relationship is. Do you actually have a relationship with a person that you can work off and give them, quote unquote, bad feedback? And then the second thing, which, Polly has spoken about, is what is the feedback culture like in your company? So I have actually heard of situations where cultures are not the best, and sometimes they could be quote unquote toxic. And in those scenarios or those situations, I actually wouldn't advise someone to give feedback that is sensitive, because that could blow back on them and, it could cost them their job or something of the sort. So I'd definitely say before even venturing into giving the feedback, maybe just analyze what is the environment within the company, within your team, what kind of relationship do you have with your boss or with the person that you're reporting to, and then see if there's even an avenue to give the feedback. And one of the simple things also there would be to get some advice from HR and see how you can navigate that space. But coming into giving the actual feedback, I'd say one of the clear things is just to be very specific. I personally have found a lot of sugarcoating doesn't really communicate the intention or the feedback that you're trying to pass across. So be very clear as to what the situation was, what was your boss's behavior, or how did they go about managing the situation, and what impact did that have on the team or on yourself. So just being very clear and objective as to what exactly it is you want to communicate. I'd say also, as you do that, probably focusing on their behavior and not their personality or who they are. And I've had this a lot, especially in feedback spaces. You give feedback on the work that has been done and not on the person. And obviously that has to take into account, was it a stressful environment? Was it a really big project? Was someone having an off day? But just like keeping in mind that it's the work that you're giving feedback on. So you're not telling someone that they're lazy or that they're a bad person, a bad coach, but let's speak about the work. So detaching the person and just talking about the quality or what it is that has been passed across. And then obviously another useful tip would be to be solution oriented. So coming in already with some suggestions as to how you can be able to move forward, how this person can become better. And I guess even in communicating that is inviting co-collaboration. So just how can we actually build this solution together, allowing your boss to react to the feedback that you're giving them, to hear their thoughts. Are they aligned? Do they think maybe you misunderstood their approach, etc.? I think that could also help clear out things within that space rather than harboring negative emotions right after. So yeah, those would be my quick tips on that.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. Those are awesome tips. Polly, just coming to you on that same question. Any reflections on giving difficult feedback upwards?
On upward feedback, there will need to be we need to have fostered an open communication policy. How is communication like? Have the hierarchy barriers been broken? Because if there are still those hierarchical barriers, it will be very, very difficult for you to offer upward feedback. So there needs, I'll talk about some training on feedback. It's very generic, but institutions that value feedback usually have some sessions for discussing openly about feedback and what we are looking at, so that there is no sugarcoating, like Kilote talked about. We are not giving feedback that is too sugar-coated. And at the end of the day, the person doesn't grow at all because they have been given false information, false feedback. And you can see for a fact that the department is not growing, but the feedback has been always positive. So there needs to be that discussion when we are talking about feedback and performance management and things like that, so that there is it's open. There's that open rule that anyone can give feedback in the workplace. The power of upward feedback lies in the ability to shape that workplace where everyone feels heard, supported, and motivated to reach even new heights in terms of their professional journey. So there needs to be that environment we have created, and not one day. It's a culture that we find, and if there is a problem, somebody can go in and say, I think there is an issue here, regardless of their position. But until those barriers have been removed, it is very hard for you to go into, say, a government institution and give that upward feedback. So we need to work on the barriers first, then open kind of communication, and then it will be easy to give those that kind of feedback.
Fantastic. Thank you, Polly. Polly, you said something, and it really touches on a point that Nkirote made earlier, and this idea of training. I think a lot of times we just assume people know. Nkirote, you were talking about the fact that in ISEC there was training around growth mindset. And Polly, here you talked about training around giving feedback, receiving feedback, and performance management. I think a lot of times in organizations, we just assume people know. And so if you are a leader in an organization, take it upon yourself to build the skills of your people. That is a key part of growth. If you really truly believe that growth is important, the growth of your people is important, then invest in their development by equipping them with skills that will support them to grow by being open, for example, to receiving feedback. We have another question I want to get to before I come to your final parting shot. But before I do that, just wanted to give a couple of announcements. So we will share in the comments section a link to our annual survey. So if you have interacted with PTS throughout 2023, we would love to hear from you. We really want to know what we did well, where we dropped the ball, and any ideas you have for us. And this is with regards to our EQ Lunch and Learn, with regards to any training you may have attended, whether it's online, in person, any interaction. If you've interacted with us on social media, I promise you it will take you less than 5 minutes to complete the survey. And so the team will share the link in the comments so that you can complete that survey for us. We really do value your feedback, and it will help us to grow as an organization because we want to continue doing what we're doing, but do it even better. So that's the first announcement I wanted to make. The second is really speaking to this idea earlier that both Kat and Nkirote talked about when we're talking about the different spaces where you put yourself. I have an exciting sneak announcement or sneak preview announcement that in March we'll be launching a curated space for professional African women. So I'm sorry, Kat, this excludes you, but I know you won't complain as I share this announcement. So watch us or follow us on social media. If you are a professional woman with at least 3 years work experience who is hungry to grow, this will be the space for you, and we will continue sharing more insights, but we're excited about going live in March as we celebrate International Women's Day. We're creating a space for women to grow together, right? So let me come to the question that's on here, Wildest Dreams. Wildest Dreams, if you don't mind, could you also just type in what your actual name is? Because you are on YouTube showing up as Wildest Dreams, but I'd love to know what your personal name is. So here are the questions, right? So I'm going to share them and we'll quickly answer, and perhaps this is an idea for another EQ Lunch and Learn. Most times when I achieve something, like maybe signing a new client, I can't celebrate because what if something happens to take the achievement away? Is there a name for this? How do I deal with this? All right. And the continuation is another issue is that when I picture my goal, I get really excited about it and how good it will feel when I have achieved it. But once I achieve it, it feels like nothing. I minimize my achievements a lot. What advice would you give me? All right, so I hope that you have gotten that. So the first is this idea that if I celebrate too hard, something could happen, right? And so I will lose whatever it is I'm celebrating. And the idea, okay, I've achieved my goal and I feel nothing, right? And I'm minimizing my achievement. What advice would you give me? We don't have a lot of time, but I think these are really good questions and I'd love for us to answer them. Throwing it out there to anyone who would like to answer, feel free to just jump in. I can see you all nodding.
Okay, let me say this in terms of celebration. I'm a big advocate of celebrating even the small wins. So it has to start from your mind. It's a mindset. I actually celebrate everything and almost nothing. even in my house. It's a lifestyle. We celebrate when we look forward to something. It hasn't happened, but we are close. And because we have that culture of celebration. So the person needs to have that culture within themselves. You must be, and then you must be careful not to put fear into a lot of the things that you have achieved. Anything can happen even to our lives. We are alive today, but anything could have happened this morning when we drove to work. So we can't live with that kind of fear. So if you have achieved something, don't be afraid to celebrate it. It is a
I love
mindset change. Just change and acknowledge when you have done well. And by the way, it starts with you. Sometimes you won't get people that pat you on the back or see what you have achieved. So you must pat yourself on the back. So I look at myself in the mirror a lot of times and say, hey, that one you did very well, Polly.
I love it.
You did well. I might not get somebody to tell me that, So I will dress up and tell myself, that was a good job. Yes, so you must get into a personal culture of appreciating yourself and remove fear out of it.
I love that. I love that very much. Thank you very much, Polly. Nkirote, I saw you agreeing with Polly. Do you have anything you want to add on?
Yeah. Just to jump in quickly. So one of the things I'd say is definitely challenge the negative thoughts. So if you spend a lot of time thinking about, ways that the achievement could be taken away, then I would actually do the direct opposite, which is let me sit here and think about all the ways this achievement is going to balloon into something greater and how I'm going to be very proud of myself when I get to the top. And it's hard. At first, it's really hard because it's counterintuitive. It's not what you're used to. But I think the more and more you do it, then the more you fall into this habit of positively thinking about outcomes for the best and being able to tap into that positive mindset that things will work out for you. And then the second thing I'd say, which is a trick I sometimes use to, again, challenge my mind, is to speak to myself as though I was speaking to a friend of mine. So I take myself out of the equation and I say, okay, so it's a friend who has made the accomplishment or had the achievement. How would I address it? How would I have that conversation with them? And then I basically say those words to myself, because I find it's very easy to beat ourselves down, self-sabotage, to talk negatively to ourselves. But I would never say the same things to a friend. I would never say the same hurtful things to another person that I love and care about. So whenever I take myself out of the situation and basically think of this person as my friend and not me, it's very easy then to be kind, to be empathetic, to encourage myself rather than beating myself down. So that's an approach that you could try as well.
Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. And as you're talking, I'm just thinking that in terms of our scheduling for the EQ Lunch and Learn, I know we've created our schedule for the year, but there's opportunity for flexibility. But I think a conversation we need to have is about self-talk and how we shift from speaking negatively to ourselves and speak differently. Kat, I don't know if you have anything you want to say on that before we wrap up.
Maybe just two things, Mucha, and thank you, Wildest Dreams, for that, because I think it's a very powerful thing. I think one in that question is a deep, and I'm taking a coaching lens here, right? Not as a guest speaker. Is one the immediate thing I would, if I were working with Wildest Dream as a coach, is to investigate your relationship with success, right? So what and many of us maybe, for instance, grew up in environments where we can't share our successes for fear of this thing and the following of jealous family members, etc. Or we deal with with parents who's like, don't gloat, don't be proud, always be humble, always be humble. So so I think Wildest Dreams, the first is really just sitting and exploring with yourself, where do your views and perspectives of success come from, and you know, what are they? And then I think the other the last element of it is also just to you know, I think I so relate with the whole idea of achieving a goal and realizing it was not all that. And I think for me, it also sparks the reality of that, like objective achievements mean nothing. What's more important is the journey, right? And so I think that the more important question is like, who do you become in the journey toward that achievement?
Yeah. Wow. Guys, we could talk for another 30 minutes, another hour, and it would be interesting. This conversation has been hot, hot, hot. Thank you so much to my panelists. I have 2 minutes to wrap this up. What is your parting shot? 30 seconds, please. Kat, let me start with you. And Nkirote, I'll come with you and close with Polly. Remember, if you do want to engage with them more and learn more from them, follow them on social media. Connect with them on LinkedIn. Kat, your parting shot as we wrap up this conversation.
I think my parting shot is you are a gift, and someone gave this gift, or whatever you are, you have is a gift to you. It's what you do with it that responds to your appreciation of the gift, whether it's in your body, your mind, your capabilities. And personal development is really just about taking all your gifts and saying, how can I improve them to the glory of God, or to as an appreciation of what I have. So that's my parting shot.
I love that you are a gift, and your development of that gift is really an appreciation of all the different, you know, talents or elements that make you up. I love it. Nkirote?
Mine would be on intentionality. So being very intentional about personal growth. It's all going to just come. And also figuring out like what is the systematic, consistent approach that I can keep on growing. One of my favorite authors, James Clear, in his bestseller Atomic Habits, he says, you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fail to the level of your systems. So definitely think through what are the systems I'm putting in place to consistently grow. Could be the feedback, could be the goals, but find an intentional approach towards becoming the best version of yourself, as Kat said.
I love it. Polly, your parting shot.
I would say like Alan Rufus, life is like a game of chess. To win, you must make a move. Knowing which move to make comes with insight and knowledge, and by learning the lessons that are accumulated along the way. So in personal development, we must make a move. It has to be intentional.
Wow. Oh man, oh man, oh man. I don't even want it to end. We've got a few comments left here. Karuhi Busaka, thank you very much for joining. Totally agree with Pauline. Always celebrate yourself and make gratitude part and parcel of your life. Franklin, a former guest on the show. Thanks for that one, Kat. One of my favorite sayings by a woman named Sarah Lewis. Mastery is not a commitment to a goal, but to a constant pursuit. Embrace the near win. Focus on the journey. The journey is what's important. Who am I becoming as I endeavor to grow? I absolutely love everything that has been said here. And, you know, I was just thinking to myself as Nkirote was talking and sharing her parting shot about intentionality. And, you know, just reflecting on our earlier conversation about the spaces we put ourselves in. And I think I am so blessed to have people in my spaces who can give such profound knowledge. Am I not blessed to call these people my friends? Woo! It has been an awesome, awesome conversation. Thank you so much, Polly. Thank you so much, Katlego. Thank you so much, Nkirote. We're so blessed to have you as part of our EQ Lunch and Learn family. And yes, we will call you again and again and again. So goodbye for now. Thank you to everyone for joining. I know I've eaten an extra 2 minutes of your time, but I really hope that you have enjoyed our conversation. So as I say goodbye to my panel, allow me to remind you once again, guys, please do complete the questionnaire. The link was shared in the comments. We would love to hear from you. What do you want to see more of, less of, as you interact with us as an organization? And keep your eyes peeled. We have a number of programs coming up over the next few weeks. For those of you who felt that this was a great conversation and you wanted more, we will have an EQ training coming up in the month of, towards the end of February. So we'll let you know more about that so that you can join us and you can do the work. Wildest Dreams, one of the things you talked about, really spoke, as Kat said, to mindset. And we have a program for individuals who are really looking to understand themselves better so that they can grow. Thank you so much for your time, guys. It has been such a great conversation. Don't forget the last Wednesday of every month. So we'll see you back here again at the end of February for our topic for the month of February. Thank you very much for joining us, guys. It's been a blessing having you online. Enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are. Goodbye.